So the topic is value orchestration for 10x impact. The theme of the meeting is and the conference is 10x. GEP, for those of you who are not familiar, I don't have a slide on GEP, but we are a global procurement software company. We do everything from category management, sourcing, contracting, P2P, supply chain, and so on. 6,000 odd employees globally, 1,000 odd clients. I lead the product management function for the company. All right, so as we talk about 10x, I want to start with this notion of what is 10x, right? And it's, I think, beyond a good idea to latch on to. If you look at a few industry examples where they have actually done it, and some metaphors that we could take away. If you look at Formula One, I watch Formula One a lot. My son loves it. We go around following races. The phase of 2014, 10 years ago, 2014 to 2021, for those of you who are familiar with the sport, Mercedes-Benz and Lewis Hamilton, they won 8 consecutive championships, which is a never-before-done thing in the history of the sport, right? And there's a lot that went into it, right from the technology that powered it, right? They had an engine, 1.6-liter V6 turbo hybrid that completely changed how they operated. There was a team, there was the team manager, there was a pit stop crew. The way they went about it, the way they analyzed data, made decisions in real time, the way they empowered the driver to do it, there's a lot to be learned, right? And that is 10x. That hopefully over the course of the day, tomorrow, we'll figure out ways to do that in our own business, our own space. If you go back not just 10 years, but 100 years ago, in the early 1930s, I think the discovery of penicillin, and I'm a big fan of history and learning from other fields, the remarkable impact it had on mortality rates, on longevity, right? On before the discovery of penicillin, a bacterial infection would likely result in death, 95% chance. It dropped it to 5%. That's impact, right? And that's remarkable impact. And we are in a much more humble profession. We should be able to do a small version of it, hopefully. And then if we go back even further, right, 200 years ago, that was the first patent for the telegraph, the great-great-grandfather of telecommunications, and the impact it had on long-distance communications and cutting down, right, sending of message from weeks and months to minutes and seconds. That's 10x. That's real 10x impact. Now, in the world of procurement, what would that mean? What would that look like, right? Beyond a lot of buzzwords, what exactly would it really do? So what it will have to do is basically impact these main priorities, which have not changed a lot. Right? We have moved from cloud to blockchain to ML ops to GenAI, but the core business priorities ultimately fall into these buckets. We talked to a lot of CPOs. Some of them are in the room today. Ultimately, everything falls into impacting bottom line with less people, usually, right, and higher expectations from the finance side, ensuring supplier resilience and continuity, working with suppliers to do that, managing risk and compliance, more so in the last few years, post-COVID, and then more focus on responsible procurement. Every metric usually falls into one of these buckets, and now the expectation is that the sub-metrics are now improved significantly. And we do have the tools now to do that. We do have the tools that largely under this bucket of GenAI. And if you cut through all the noise and you cut through all the daily announcements on a new model and what has changed, what it does fundamentally, and we work closely at GEP, we are partners of OpenAI, we are partners of Google with Gemini. I go to Seattle, I go to Mountain View, meet with them on a regular basis, and we consume a lot of what they give. But at its core, what it has done, and the way we think of it in our product management framework, is it has given us the ability to take natural language for interaction, fundamentally. And this could be anywhere from application developer coding, citizen developer extending an app, to an end user providing a command to the application saying, I want to do X, whatever X might be. Right, run a report, find suppliers, analyze a contract, process a paper invoice, and so on and so forth. You can engage with the application in a very different way than we could in the past. And the system has the ability to figure out what is the intent, what is it that the user is trying to do, break it down into different tasks. And at the back, the reasoning engine, which is a combination of these LLMs, agents, and so on, what it allows us to do now is break down fairly complex tasks and into micro tasks without having to formally codify the workflow and be able to dynamically execute what was the user's intent. Pull data from your internal system, pull data from outside systems, bring in risk metrics, make some intelligent recommendations, guide the user in a dynamic way. That's fundamentally what has changed. Now that can be applied in many ways, and you'll see all sorts of solutions over the next 2 days that are applying this technology, in certain niche areas within the procurement framework. We are doing the same. We are doing it across the entire procurement framework. But this allows us to do a lot more. And the historic challenges we had with terms of data is messy, Supplier data is messy, or contract data is spread out, or so on, multiple ERPs. We don't have time to spend on a massive MDM project. Historical challenges that user training is a problem, and so on, adoption. This gives a lot of avenues and opportunities for us to apply, and it's just getting started, Whatever AI we have today is the least good version. Every day it keeps improving. And the expectation is that at least the next few months and years, it will become more and more mainstream. We are seeing a lot of customers using it and seeing big impacts, but in specific areas that they feel their organization needs it. When we talk to our clients and CPOs as to where do they expect to apply all this, And if you look at automation, and this is a sample set of some of our clients today, what is the degree of automation today across different procurement activities, and where they expect it should be by the end of next year? This is top quartile clients and CPOs, of course. They expect a significant shift now, not just by adopting GenAI. I'll also clarify, I think there is also a bit of a desire to invest, and there is a desire, and there is some budgets have opened up to try out some of these technologies. So we see significant changes in category management, for example. There's a GenAI is very good at doing that, A lot of changes in analytics, predictive analytics particularly, not just looking back at spend, not just looking back at supplier performance, but actually predicting a lot more in terms of what do we expect going forward, collaborating a lot more with the business, on their demand. Significant amount of capabilities on contracts, which is unstructured data, perfect for ML ops and GenAI like capabilities. A lot on supplier and risk, and then you'll of course hear a lot of orchestration throughout the day today and tomorrow. And then paper invoices, finding exceptions, managing exceptions when they don't match, That unstructured workflow, which is so crucial for accounts payable. So we expect to see a lot, once again, for a segment of customers who are applying it the right way in their organizational context. And once again, like the Formula One example, there's a lot more that goes into it than just that engine. There's a organizational commitment, figuring out the right area, getting the right partner, and so on. Within the core S2P flow itself, what we are seeing is a lot of automation of tactical tasks as well. Some examples are listed here. There are many more. Every few months we are discovering. But any activity that can be automated, where the cycle time can be cut down, where the user doesn't have to click, the user doesn't have to enter information. If the user can simply ask the system to do it, we are seeing most of it is getting automated, and including virtual assistants supporting all that. But beyond the automation of the core, there's few areas where we are seeing, or at least we at GEP, when we work with some large clients, are seeing a focus and where we are investing. One is business partnering, partnering with the end business on budgeting, their upcoming demand. Usually procurement has been at the tail end of receiving some of these things, but there is an opportunity now to engage much more. And there are tools and capabilities available to do that. A lot more on category management, as I mentioned, everything from category strategy, category intelligence, managing categories in a much bigger way. I'll dig into that in just a second. Same on contracting, analytics across all your contracts, right? Authoring, comparing it to clauses, right? The system making sure that it's recommending the right clause, looking for exceptions, something that would become usually take a much longer time. And then on the obligation side, once a contract has KPIs, SLAs, how do we make sure that's reflected on the P2P side? Orchestration, everything from inflow to workflow visibility to routing. And then finally, supplier collaboration. So supplier data, supplier data cleanup. AI can do a lot there. We are working with clients to clean that up. Supplier collaboration in terms of sharing forecasts, working with suppliers on managing the KPIs, assigning performance scorecards, fairly detailed risk management capabilities. AI is able to allow all of that, and that's how we at least see the world, and that's how we are investing and working with customers to advance their procurement journey. So on the category management side, I'll just do a quick deep dive on a couple of them, and we are happy to talk to others on other areas also. We see the category manager's role as changing quite a bit in the next few years, and the category manager could potentially be the key driver of all these activities. Right? Historically, I think category managers' roles have been limited to defining a strategy, putting it on SharePoint, negotiating a few contracts, doing some sourcing events. But if you think about it, they ultimately should be responsible for compliance. They should be responsible for contract risk. They should be responsible for automation of invoices that actually fall under that category. Those are all part of the category's KPIs. And that is possible today with the tools that are available. They need a lot of information. All that information needs to be brought together to one place, and that is possible. If you dig deeper into a topic like compliance, for example, if you have to track compliance, I don't know how many of you can quickly say, well, how much is your compliance today, right? Across your organization, broken out by categories, and then you take different flavors of compliance. It's very hard. Historically, it was challenging. Now, part of the solutions that we have built allow us to do that by taking in contract data, unstructured data, organizing it, breaking up the metadata, taking in procurement transaction data, linking the two, and then trying to see where is the leakage happening. And that could have different dimensions also. There are dimensions of spend compliance where you're buying from the wrong supplier. You're supposed to be buying from one, but you're buying from someone else. There could be aspects of price compliance where you're buying from the right supplier, but not at the right price. There could be aspects of contractual compliance beyond price where you are due certain rebates, you are due certain payment terms. All this is usually very tricky to track. I doubt anyone has a clean dashboard where you track it on a monthly basis today. And the reason historically was it's very hard to link the data elements. The data is very messy. And on a daily basis, something as simple as linking this supplier to this contract to this transaction is very painful. There's something we are doing with BMS, for instance. Paula is in the room where part of the business case was instead of going and negotiating new things, let's first make sure that we honor what we have negotiated and make sure our suppliers stick to their contractual commitments. Same thing with asking the system for recommendations, for example. In this one example, we asked a question, right, where so give us a recommendation on how to shift the non-compliant spend. Now, on paper, it's a simple ask. Just move it to the one supplier who has the lowest price. But there's more complicated scenarios that could be run to say, well, if you move it here, you might save so much in price. If you move it here as a composite of price and moving up the rebate tier, you will save more. And that sort of predictive analytics on a real-time basis is what the GenAI reasoning engine can allow. And there's many more use cases like that. But category management, I think there's some stat I read that in a typical Formula One race, they crunch around 1 trillion data points within that race. And every second, the driver is being given some instruction based on tire pressure, temperature, right, engine performance, and whatnot. That is what category managers need. And it's usually very hard. It's very hard to get that information in one place. And that's why there are still spend analytics tools, but they look back, maybe a month back. The expectation from category managers in the future is I need all this information, and then I make decisions. I go improve the compliance. Same thing with risk. There are capabilities on which category managers would expect on supplier risk, right? There's historical basic challenges on a profile of suppliers. Now, if you have one ERP, you are in good shape. Likely that is not the case, and even if you have a single ERP, the single golden record of a supplier has a basic hygiene factor that shows, right, their profile, the contracts tied to it, the transactions tied to it, in one place. That's what the category managers need, the supplier managers need to work with. AI does allow for that, right? Those are the capabilities we are working on. Linking it to external intelligence, linking it to certain third-party subscriptions that you may have signed up for, to keep tracking that supplier's performance and the risk. That's very, very possible now, which a couple of years ago would have required a massive MDM project, right? And even then, who knows with data governance and standards. It's very much possible now with AI. And proactive actions, right? Recommendations from the system that these are the things where the supplier is either non-compliant with what we have contractually agreed, or there are some worrying signs brewing based on their ESG performance in this area, and if we forecast it out 6 months, this could be a challenge. It's worth having a corrective action conversation with them. All those things can be digitized, much more so than we were able to do in the past. Same thing on risk management. We do a lot of work with banking and financial services companies and many other companies where the expectation is procurement, beyond cost savings and compliance and so on, is actively managing risk. Procurement is in charge of managing supplier risk, and that is once again a hygiene factor. But it's becoming more complicated because you're responsible for tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers and their performance. You are responsible for delays. You are responsible for many other aspects of the supplier. There are systemic capabilities now embedded in the core S2P flow, and we are seeing this trend more and more so where third-party risk management is slowly becoming more of a mainstream expectation in S2P applications, where risk is embedded into the whole flow. All right, and managing risk at different levels of the supplier for different categories, right, triggering different due diligence flows before a supplier is onboarded, after a supplier is onboarded and a contract is signed, even offboarding. There are many expectations in companies which are slowly coming to procurement more and more so, and there are tools available today that allow you to manage that. And there are many companies out there using some of these capabilities, at least with GEP and many more so out there. And there's some screenshots right on the application where ideally Supplier 360 should show you everything you need to know about the supplier. And once again, I think there are some other sessions on unified applications versus standalone best of breed, and there's many pros and cons, but one big outcome that whatever tech stack you end up doing as a company is you should be able to connect these data points. You should be able to connect the supplier data with the contract data, with the P2P data, all under the category. Right? That should be the expectation, whatever tech stack you go with. Now, we have a point of view that a unified solution does it better, but regardless, the cross-linkage across these data elements is where the real insight and decision-making magic lies. Right? In the supplier case, tying contracts, P2P performance, spend, risk and performance indicators in one place is ideally what you need. Right? There's one more example of a supplier security scorecard. And there are companies that are doing it today. Right? There are companies that are getting 10x procurement at scale. That's the other thing. Ideally, whatever solution you put in place, you do want to test it out as a POC, but you want to apply it at scale, right, across all your suppliers, all your users, all your locations globally. There's work we do with Caterpillar, for example, who are fairly ahead in the industrial manufacturing space when it comes to using GenAI. They have seen some significant changes in terms of their procurement metrics. Their spend visibility in real time with predictive analytics has gone up almost 95% in the last couple of years. On the sourcing automation side, we've moved the needle from 20 to 80%. Contracts work is still going on, but we expect that 75% of their contracts will be GenAI based in the next 9 months or so. And these are significantly complex transactions. These contracts are extremely intricate, right? Complex combination of materials and services, but that's at scale, right? Same thing Chevron, they manage close to $75 billion in annual transactions, fully digitized. And these are multi-year journeys as well, so I don't want to make it sound like it's super easy, but with the right commitment and the right technology foundation, they were able to do that across 45 odd countries. They managed 99% electronic invoices through ERS. It was a significant undertaking for 75 billion in spend on an annual basis. And we're talking hundreds of thousands invoices. And services, which usually is much more complex for us to buy, they were able to achieve 85% automation. There are capabilities and tools available in our portfolio, and I'm sure in others to do that as well. Bank of America, which has some of the most stringent risk management expectations of any company that I've seen, they have shifted from 0 to 85% automated risk controls globally across every country that they operate in. And they manage close to 30,000 annual risk forms, very complex, very intricate, but they are able to see that huge 10x impact. Right? And there are just some examples. There are many more cases of clients who are doing 10x improvement in category management. Bristol-Myers Squibb is in the room here. They have seen a significant impact on their category managers and compliance. There are other clients in healthcare that we are working with who are doing a lot of work in improving their contract compliance, right, and supplier collaboration capability. So many companies are seeing this result, and more of our clients that we see, there is a difference between some of our clients who are embarking on these journeys much more aggressively now, right, with the right technical foundation, with the right partnership. And there are others who are still waiting to see how it will play out. And we are seeing a big gap between the results, the automation, the performance on both sides. So with that, I will bring it to a wrap up. So we mapped, right, some of these focus areas, which I'm sure many of you are thinking exactly, you must have some burning need, that's why, and those are your interactions for the next couple of days. On a scale of effectiveness versus efficiency, as to where do we see the value, right, of using some of these new capabilities. So I would say some of the low-hanging fruit, which will just improve automation to some extent, are accounts payable, some tailspin, some autonomous negotiations. And this is based on the broad business impact, right, from procurement standpoint. There are others at a slightly more higher end, particularly collaboration on forecasting and demand with suppliers, particularly scope 3 tracking of emissions. There are capabilities available today that didn't exist 2-3 years ago. And then autonomous sourcing for more complex events, slightly higher up. Much more on the effectiveness side, not just cutting down the cycle time, would be the business partnering, bringing budgets into the mix, bringing future plans into the mix, long-term capital projects, right, annual procurement plans. And there are ways to digitize it, and there are ways to track it and manage it in the system today, right? And then much more advanced analytics, more complex analytics. And then finally on the top right, where we see a good mix of both, right? Total orchestration, but much more complex than simple intake, right? End-to-end workflow triggering, intelligent category management, all the aspects that I mentioned today, allowing category strategy, financial performance, operational performance, all in one place for the category manager, risk management, and then contract lifecycle, which are perfect use cases. And then over the next 2 years, as you saw in the previous slide, we expect some top performers will significantly shift the needle in terms of the percentage automation and they see with these. And for people who are on this journey, some of you must be on the journey, some of you are starting out. What we have seen work with customers is you decide your tech stack strategy, right? You have certain pieces, you may not have certain pieces. That decision has to be made. Are you going to bet on a procurement backbone? Are you going to stitch together a bunch of applications and make them connect to each other? That stack is key, right? At the foundation of that stack is this data model. How will that stack consume or manage your supplier data, your contract data, your transaction data? What is the strategy to do that? The team itself has to be reskilled to some extent. I think ultimately the business problems are the same, but underneath, the teams that you bring on from outside have to be somewhat digitalists, right? You need a good, decent mix of data scientists, prompt engineers, who understand some of these capabilities, who can take a POC, actually run with it fully for your organizational context. Take your data, your integrations, and make sure it works. You prioritize the initiatives. You cannot solve all of that in a matter of weeks or months. You pick and choose a few areas, show that win, get internal commitment, sponsorship to expand the journey further, and create that ecosystem. And most of these clients that I mentioned earlier, they are that long-term partnership ecosystem with the technical foundation to make it happen. With that, I'll come back to the examples from before on other industries where we saw 10x. What is common between these innovations 10 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and I think today, is that in all of them there was this fundamental technological breakthrough which I think we are living through that right now. This might be the biggest one of our generation, possibly. And it's going to take time. It's going to take the next 5-10 years to fully manifest what it can do. All right? And then you'll have to stay with it and at least be abreast of it. There were unique ways of applying that technology that people picked, right? And they decided this is exactly how we are going to apply it to our context. And the market conditions were favorable. There was in some cases there was a war. In some cases there was, with penicillin, for example, it was heavily used in World War II, cutting down soldier mortality rates by almost 90%. Right, same thing at the time of the telegraph. A lot of them also took a long time to sort of manifest in terms of the big impact, right? The telegraph was the forefather of communications later. Then came radio and television and so on. We are, I think, at the first phase of GenAI, and a lot more will happen over the next few years. But regardless, in all of these cases, I think as procurement, if we at least establish a foundation with the right technology, the right partner, start showing some wins, then our functions will be ready for 10x metrics. Thank you very much.